Well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to first say welcome. You could be watching this on Facebook Live, YouTube, on our community cafe, on community television today. I just want to thank you for tuning in. I am so excited. My name is Martine Watkins, and today I get to have a conversation with a really wonderful person that I've known for many years, who has also just flourished as a wonderful leader in our community. And her name is Joy Flynn. And I will, before we start, just say this is definitely an odd time with technology and circumstances, and everybody has so much going on. And I want to just thank Joy for finding the time in her busy day to sit down with us, to pull over and have a conversation. And thank you, Joy, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor, it really is.
Well, I just want to start by saying, I've known you for many years, and I just know what just an incredible person you are, a woman of integrity and community leader who's worked in a number of different capacities and has volunteered your talents in many ways. And I wonder if you could just introduce yourself to those who may be watching, share a little bit about your leadership journey and some of the things that you're up to right now.
Well, I always wonder, do I say who I am or do I say what I do? Because I feel like really who I am is just a reflection of the things that I do for the community. Like you said, I've given back in lots of different ways. I've served on the school board, well, my children's school board at Bradley Elementary as the president for 3 years. And I did a lot of fundraising for them. I also currently am on the Second Harvest Food Bank board of trustees, and then I am a friend of the Walnut Avenue Family Center. I'm a mom, I'm a mother, sister, friend, cousin. I mean, I'm just a regular person, just like everybody else, and I have a heart for my community, so I like to serve. As many might know, I held the first peaceful action that took place on May 30th, just a few days after the public execution of George Floyd, and I did it in response to a need for seeing other Black people in the community. We really needed to see one another, and we needed to be seen by the wider and the whiter community, just so that it was known that we are here and we are contributing members to the community. We're so spread out that it's hard to really know who's actually a resident and who might just be driving through. So my goal for that action has happened. We've seen each other, we've formed a coalition of Black community members, and we're in regular conversation with one another. So it's been a really exciting last few months. And I've gotten to reconnect with you as well, which is really fun.
It's been really fun to connect with you as well, Joy. And I just want to say on a personal level, it's been wonderful to see your just your natural ability to and just sort of spark peaceful, honest, vulnerable conversations to bring people together in a really meaningful way. And I feel really grateful to be connected to you again at this time. I wanted to share, when we first started to connect, we talked a little bit about, our police chief, Andy Mills, at the time said that this really came about because you reached out to him the night before you held and sort of initiated this peaceful protest. And I wonder if you want to just sort of share a little bit about what led you to want to reach out to our police chief, but also where you're at with communications around some of the reforms that are being discussed in terms of, equality and equity and fair treatment and justice and past practice, all of the above.
Well, it was recommended to me that I reach out to him, and really that whole day was years in the making and moments and days in the making. I put the call to action out to meet me at the clock tower Thursday morning, and the action took place Saturday morning. Friday night, somebody recommended that I reach out to Chief Mills. And when I say years in the making, I mean so, because I've been in the community for so long. I have so many community connections. And I had actually already met Mayor Cummings at an event, and I'd met Chief Mills twice. And so that made the lines of communication somewhat open. And because I came with a lot of connections, there was a trust between the understanding of what it was I was about to do, and that the intention was one of positivity and one for meeting the needs of the community. But again, it was out of a recommendation. I was nervous to reach out to him just because of everything that had been going on with just relations between civilians and police officers. But I was so glad that I did, because it gave me an opportunity to build this begin this conversation, really. And it allowed him the opportunity to step into a place of leadership for the community, and say that what he saw nationwide is wrong, and that he wants to be a part of the change. And we've been in continuing conversation. We actually just had a conversation a couple of days ago, and I was able to bring up to him some options for policy change that I think would be good to ensure continued safety of the community, because we all know he's not going to be the chief forever. And having these policies put in place now make it so that we keep not just the community members safe, but the police officers safe as well in perpetuity.
Right.
I can be specific about that policy change if you'd like.
Sure. I think it's helpful for people to understand a little bit more.
So one of the things that happens with policing is that if a police officer is fired for a violent offense, or worse, then they can transfer to a new agency. And so one of the things that Chief Mills, he won't hire somebody that has a violent past, but it's not been a policy. So now it will be a policy that will not be allowed to. They will not be allowed to be hired if they've had, a violent history. I'm being kind of vague. There's more specifics around that, but just for generalization terms, that's what's going to happen. And so that way, when he is no longer the police chief, to change that policy would be questioned. Well, why would you want to change a policy like that? So that way it'll stick.
I really appreciate that perspective in terms of policy making, and how, as a city council member, we come and go, and mayors come and go, but we want our policies to be, one, co-created with the community, so there's understanding and ownership over it, and two, be instituted so that they aren't sort of by reaction, or this one decision and then now into the next decision. Like, how do you start to really think about the longevity of a policy and the purpose of that? And I think what I hear often around some of the officer involved shootings is that they've had sort of a pattern of past violence. And so I think that's a really meaningful policy, because then we're now not recruiting and having those types of officers on our police force. So I appreciate that example.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's not just for protection for the community, it's protection for the officers as well. Because if they have a volatile partner, then that's putting that other police officer at risk as well. So it's twofold, which is something that I really appreciate, because I as of today, I am not an abolitionist. I'm a reformist, and this is something that I think will cause it will, again, will be set in place to keep the community and the officers safe.
Great. Well, I do feel more comfortable sharing a little bit more about what that means to sort of, and maybe why as of today you're not an abolitionist but a reformist. Do you want to share a little bit more for people who might not know or be tracking that?
So I believe in public safety. I don't know that abolishment is the answer. I see our officers as fellow community members, and I think that we all need to work together to create better policing. I think that if these policies that are being looked at more closely and that they're implemented, what it's going to do is it's going to cause officers to have to think twice or 3 times before they react. And it will cause them to have to think of other ways to respond to calls and respond to situations. By having these new policies and accountabilities in place, it will also then down the line cause officers who are thinking about joining law enforcement to really think about why they're joining law enforcement, because they're going to now know that these different policies and these different actionable accountability tactics will be taken into consideration should they, violate them, really. So, and then, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
I was going to say, and as for abolitionists, it gives people, with reform, it gives people the opportunity for change. I feel like people can change. I feel like agencies can change. It's a cultural thing. And it's not just the police. We have to look into the criminal justice system and the DA's office. And it's what I'm really trying to do is help create a template for change that can be taken in consideration from all agencies, starting with the agencies within Santa Cruz County.
I appreciate that perspective. I was actually having a conversation with Chief Mills, and we were talking a little bit about how the defund movement and sort of where that's coming from. I shared the example of Camden, New Jersey, and really not knowing too much about that situation, but it sounded like their law enforcement community was so toxic that it almost needed to be rebuilt from a place of let's stop and then rebuild. And so how do different jurisdictions build on where they are, or coming from that place of what are the assets, what's not working, what are the continuous improvement opportunities here, and how do we continue to do that? I think to your earlier point around policy is that we can have a funding decision one year and that can completely change the next. So really thinking about how are we coming up with a more holistic approach to public safety. And I think one of the things that we all crave is to feel safe. It's part of our human response and instinct, and we want people to feel safe. And we have a history that we haven't really reconciled as a nation, and we have a criminal justice system that has disproportionately incarcerated Black and Brown people, which leads to generational challenges and poverty and cycles of trauma. We have housing segregation policy in the past that's led to lack of opportunity for social mobility, which sometimes then couples with opportunity for quality education and air quality. And it's all interconnected, as you said. And I think we have to, if we truly want to talk about race and our history of racial injustice, and we want to improve our systems, we do have to look at all of our systems. And we can acknowledge that our law enforcement system did come from origins of racial injustice and targeting Black people. And how do we evolve to ensure safety for everybody. So I appreciate your perspective. And I think that it's a long haul for sure, and one we must do. And so I guess with that, what would you say is your sort of vision for Santa Cruz moving forward? I know it started with this, this one event to really mobilize, be seen, be heard, be recognized, be together, to acknowledge the public murder of Mr. George Floyd. But where do we go from here if it were your ideal path?
Well, you mentioned the over incarceration of Black and Brown people. And, one of the things that I also wanted to bring to light during that action was that we are not immune as a community from racial injustice, from racism. It happens here. And, there are, in the county jail, my understanding is that there are 3 times more Black people in the county jail as represented in our community. So Black people in Santa Cruz County make up about 1.4%. So 3% of the county jail population right now are made up of Black people. So that is not okay. So trying to understand why that is and how that has come to be is one of the things that I want to understand. And I've made a call to each of the agencies to participate financially in having an assessment done to better understand why that is and where that's coming from, because each agency is responsible for bringing people to the jail. But then we do have to take it a step further and then look at the criminal justice system and the DA's office and how people end up there. So that's kind of the next steps of what I'm looking for. I've already started a conversation with Sheriff Hart about it, and I know that Andy Mills is willing to participate in that. The other things that I'm looking at is the restorative justice opportunities within the juvenile courts. There's something that is being implemented in the county called neighborhood courts. Somebody who I've been working with, Elaine Johnson, is working on that. So doing whatever I can to have accomplices, to be an accomplice for her, to make sure that that gets implemented in Santa Cruz County, just to help keep the dignity of our youth and keep them out of the criminal justice system. Because once you're in the criminal justice system, the trajectory of your life takes a major turn. So those are kind of the 2 things that I'm working on. And then just continuing with the police reform with the agencies that are willing to work with me. I do know that that Chief Honda is working on things and open to conversations. Obviously, Chief Mills, and then Chief McManus is open to having conversations as well. Again, Sheriff Hart, I've had conversations with him and will continue to do so. I've not heard from Scotts Valley at all. So that's kind of concerning to me. And so I'm hoping that that will change too.
Wonderful. Well, you bring up so many important points that I think one is just the culture around all of the various jurisdictions matters, and how do we think broadly about some of the efforts that are underway, as you said. I just will say I'm doing like a yay, because I've done restorative justice for forever, and in the juvenile kind of in my work in education. And I appreciate that approach because one, there is the acknowledgement of our own personal accountability. And there's also the acknowledgement of us as it relates to community, and the acknowledgement of we're all starting from assets, and how do we build on those assets? And I say that because when we think of something that occurs, it's so important to think of it holistically, as opposed to a formula that if you do this, you get that, and then this is your punishment. And I will just kind of give a plug that part of what the the systems shift that you were sharing too is really looking at all systems in terms of our healthcare, in terms of our education, in terms of, we've done restorative justice in schools where you have an offense occur on campus, so you get penalized for the campus offense, but then you also have another penalty, and it's called the school to prison pipeline, because then now you're in the justice system. So how are we thinking about some of these interventions and interrupting those to set folks up on trajectories for success? And one of the grants I wrote several years back was to get high school and high set diploma programs in the jails. So when you leave, you're also set up for success. So I think it's an incredibly important effort to take hold, to continue to talk about, and to address at all levels in terms of our systemic racism and biases that we've had integrated and kind of built from kind of the ground up, really. In regards to community members wanting to support you or wanting to stay engaged in this conversation, what would you say to them, or what do you suggest in terms of, say somebody's watching and they want to say, I want to be an ally, or I want to be involved, how could they potentially?
So I was I was interviewed earlier this week, and somebody brought up the idea of accomplice, and I just love that idea. And it's gone over the last few months from being an ally to being an amplifier. And I use the word amplifier because there was an action behind it. And now I love this idea of becoming an accomplice. So how can you be an accomplice from where you're at? Listening to the things that I said today, if any of them resonate with you, reach out to your supervisor, reach out to your mayor, reach out to the chief of police where you live, and ask them what they are doing to be a part of the change and to change policing. Begin where you're at. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to, I'm just a simple woman, and I helped to found the Santa Cruz County Black Coalition for Racial and for Justice and Racial Equity. I just am a community member who has a heart for their community. So just whatever you're doing for your job, ask these questions and start taking a look at how there may be injustices happening and what you can do to make a change. Those are some of the things. I can be found on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Assemble with Joy, and because that's what I want. I want everybody to come together, get put back together with joy, and Facebook at Joy Flynn. So those are, and I am in the process of building a group of accomplices. So if you'd like to be an accomplice, then please reach out to me on Instagram, because I have thoughts and ideas, and I'd love to put you to work.
Well, I'll just say for sure that you're not just a simple woman. You're a change maker, and you're a leader. And we see, and personally, having known you for many years, it's been really a pleasure to see you grow as a leader here in our community. And we all play a role in these types of changes, whether it be us reflecting on our individual experiences or biases, or wanting to learn more and dive a little bit deeper into assumptions we may have had, to have hard conversations with family members or community members, to just to continue to talk about this. I think what we've seen recently is this has been an underlying element that has festered, and we need to use this moment to transform change so that everybody is doing better and we all benefit from that. So I just appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I guess I'll just say before we end, and you can get back on the road, what else would you like to share with anybody who's watching before we kind of close tonight?
Well, I would like to share that sentiment. I feel the same way about you. It's been wonderful to watch you grow, and thank you for always helping me step out of humility and into ownership. I appreciate that. I just want people to know and understand that they have what it takes. I feel like people think that they need to have more or be more, but I just want people to know that they are enough, where they are, how they are, and anything that they have to lend to the cause is helpful. You know, if you know how to build a website, you know, if you know how to make phone calls, if you know how to write, if you know, things like that. Every piece of your skill set, every piece of your intellectual property, everybody has a piece of value that is imperative to making this move forward. So don't for 1 second think that you're not enough where you're at. And that's kind of the message that I want to say. If you see that something is wrong, you know that something's wrong, and you're feeling stuck, like you can't do something about it, that's not true. You can. And I'm happy to point you in the direction. I can't teach you how to be anti-racist. I can't teach you where your biases are. You have to do that work. But I can give you some little tips and tricks along the way.
I love that. And I love the recognition that we're all, there's no end point, right? We're all just growing in our beliefs, our assumptions, our biases, and we have to continue to work at that as individuals. And, you know, with the recent debates and what came out of the conversation, now more than ever, do we need to denounce white supremacy and talk about race and uplift those who've been left behind, and elect presidents that aren't going to say that they support white supremacy. And I feel like that we're so blessed in Santa Cruz to have a community that wants to really move our city in the direction that I think majority of our country wants to go in as well. And that's the beauty of what we can do right now locally. And so we're really lucky to have your local leadership. You can count on me as not only a friend who will uplift you when you need it, but also as a partner to support some of the systemic change that we share, and in hopes that our future generations have a different experience. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for pausing your trip and sharing this really rich conversation with me, and also thank those who may be watching for joining us as
And Martine Watkins for City Council 2021.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Joy. Yes, and definitely stay connected for all of the different conversations we've been having. It's been great.
For being an accomplice and for being a friend. I'm honored.
Oh, thank you, Joy. Well, I just will then go ahead and close this out, and I just will say thank you for watching, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or on our community cafe on CTV. I'm really excited that we have some great guests coming up. We'll be talking to Congressman Jimmy Panetta, and also our Cabrillo trustee, Adam Spickler, will be joining us for a conversation around his monumental election as an open trans man. And we have really wonderful, rich leaders in our community, and I'm really grateful to have these conversations with them. And if you'd like to learn more, please visit the website at martinewatkins.com.